we assign resources through the budget and do the sectoral planning, we got a lot of confrontation. That is why it's not a surprise that we all invest many more times resources in activity that contribute to climate change, make us more vulnerable than what we invest in climate mitigation or in climate adaptation. Globally, we invest 150 times more resources in activities that generates deforestation than what we invest in forest conservation. So that's a big, big issue. The GEF looks into the future as an agent that can help countries move more into this area of policy coherence, breaking down with the institutional silos. And I will say even the institutional failure, because at the end of the day, our societies is the end product of our institutions. And I strongly believe, and this is my experience in Costa Rica, that we will never do the leap forward in terms of achieving our goals and targets of sustainability with the same institutional framework that in first place created the problem that we want to solve. In Costa Rica, we learned that many years ago, and instead of having a Ministry of Environment dealing with renewable natural resources and a Ministry of Energy and Mines dealing with non-renewable natural resources, we created just one agency. So we got a Ministry of Environment and Energy, and there is no conflict within the energy and mining agenda with the conservation agenda. We were able to really plan long-term within the same agency, and that is why Costa Rica was able in the last 25 years to go 60% hydro and 40% fossil fuels in the electric sector to 100% renewable energies, even with and financing that transition through the domestic financial mechanisms. Some of them very traditional financial mechanisms, and some of them very innovative. The same thing with the Natural Resources Agency. We got at the country level, sometimes many agencies working on silos. We got a Forest Service, a Wildlife Service, a National Park Service, in different agencies with a very limited vision in terms of managing coherently the landscape. We merged them all together into one, and that gave us a lot of benefits in terms of achieving our goals of reverting the rate of deforestation and creating a strong system of protected areas. Costa Rica has been able to restore 1 million hectares out of 5 million total area on the land. So we doubled the size of our forest. So we were able to go 100% renewable energy and double the size of our forest while our economy tripled and our population doubled. We learned that in order to achieve progress in our aspiration for sustainability, we need to do major surgery and adjustment in the institutional framework. And I see many countries in the north, in the south already, doing the learning by doing, and even a little bit of trial and error. So I see a big role for the GF in helping governments do the proper political dialogues, generate the proper information, and thinking out of the box on how we develop and improve our institutional framework that it really matches our sustainable development goals and the many different environmental goals and targets within the multilateral agreements. And the other area, which is a barrier for the system change and that we will be working, is in assisting and helping countries mobilize financial resources from all sources. Because we recognize that as a multilateral mechanism, we got limited capacities to financially support on a grant basis 150 countries. And when we see data and information, there is a lot of resources that are being domestically assigned through many different programs, whereby the GF can play a role for higher integration and higher efficiency. If we look, in terms of climate adaptation, the picture is very clear to me. Yeah. We won't be able to go beyond what we have done in the past in terms of resilience and climate adaptation without really understanding some basic information that we need to work at the country level. First, we need to really understand how much money is already the country investing in climate adaptation and resilience with domestic resources, through public expenditures. If I want to go to a country, to a less developed country, and try to find out how much money is being invested in climate adaptation to public expenditures, the information is not available. I need to kind of hire an archaeology that goes into the national budget and begin digging for that information. We need to have that information as because there are many budget lines that are contributing not just in resilience and climate adaptation, but also in loss and damages. If we are able to generate that information is extremely valuable because one, we will know how much money is the country investing in climate adaptation and resilience. Second, we will find how many agencies from the public sector and even from the private sector are already investing in climate adaptation. As you got this information and based on your national adaptation plan, you began aligning those investments in a very coherent manner. So as you do the adaptation expenditures review, which is a basic homework that we all need to do, you need to do the following task, which is defining the financial needs. I constantly try to find information about the climate adaptation or the climate change financial needs. And that information is very top down, very global in the best of cases, and sometimes not even, reliable information. And when you try to find that information at the country level, it's not available. These are the kind of works that I want to do jointly with the Adaptation Fund, doing this adaptation expenditure review, then doing the financial needs. And as we have both informations, we will have a better understanding of their financial gap. And here's where we can be very strategic in investing in narrowing that financial gap. Because at the end of the day, there's a lot of countries that can do relatively good by mobilizing more efficiently the domestic resources, as opposed to, excuse me, less developed nations, which are in a desperate situation where they need funding, they need a strategic funding, and they need a lot of support. In this context, ecosystem-based adaptation, in this context, landscape and ecosystem restoration are extremely relevant and important. The benefits of doing and focusing on nature-based solution is extremely important. Is the most cost-effective investment that we can see. And the best example is probably my country. My country has doubled the size of the Air Force in the last 25 years, while the rest of the countries in my region has lost 25% of their forest. Every time that a hurricane hits Central America, Costa Rica is by far the country that stands better to those extreme weather events. And that is basically because we've been restoring systematically the landscape. And we've been able to restore it, yes, because we got the GF, we got the Adaptation Fund, we got the multilateral mechanism, but those resources were basically initial investment that catalyzed better policies, better institutions, and innovative financial mechanisms. Costa Rica put based on GF investment in the late 1990s, put a tax on fossil fuels, which we called the tropical carbon tax. It's a very different concept to the carbon tax that I believe is a northern concept. In the north, the carbon tax is basically to look for more efficiencies in the use of fossil fuels and to finance the transition towards renewable energy. What we did in Costa Rica with the tropical carbon tax is basically dealing with a market failure. If you own a forest or if you want to restore the landscape or you want to increase biomass at the farm level, you will be providing a lot of environmental services to the society, to the country, by offsetting carbon, by being more resilient to climate change, that by contributing into water resilience, protecting biodiversity, you generate environmental services, somebody should pay for those services. And we found and created mechanisms by which those beneficiaries of those environmental services should pay for that. The carbon tax is a mechanism by which those who use fossil fuel in Costa Rica are paying those who are in the landscape doing forest-related activity for their services of offsetting your carbon footprint. The tax on fossil fuels, even though Costa Rica is a developing country and there were a lot of opposition to put a tax on fossil fuels, at the end of the day, it works very well because we generated a $30 million fund that invests heavily and strategically in indigenous communities and small farmers in marginal soils and lands in the watershed, in the basins, which are critical for water resilience, water security, for the climate adaptation. And, 20 years later, after we created these mechanisms, we saw the forest coming back. We began paying the cost of opportunity of doing cattle ranching. Most of the country was deforested for cattle ranching. Unfortunately, because of the fragile ecosystems and fragile soils, Costa Rica is not a good country for cattle ranching, like probably the same case of many developing countries. And the watersheds were highly impacted. By creating this positive incentive, the payment for environmental services that is being financed through the carbon tax, we were able to match the cost of opportunity, and then ecotourism came little by little, becoming another important source of income. So people went from cattle ranching into restoration and ecotourism, and they are doing way better. That is why we've been able to, double the size of our forests, and while the economy tripled. And there are many good examples in many other countries. So this is a good example of how we can, with our limited resources, invest in not only in learning how to use nature to make us more resilient and increase our capacity to adapt to climate change, but also at the same time being able to develop financial mechanisms at the country level that can really leverage what we from our funds are doing, and that is one element that I strongly believe is extremely important. I would like to finalize by saying that as a politician or as a former politician, I keep my finger on all political negotiations, and I tend to believe that we may be close to a very positive cycle of increased funding from all sources, not just the international or from ODA, but also at the national level. Countries are understanding that it is in their own self-interest to mobilize more efficiently resources and to be able to deal with the lack of policy coherence. At the same time, that there are political negotiations in the context and aftermath of COVID-19 and in the need for a green and blue recovery, which is clean and resilient, of increased funding. And this can be a positive tendency. And I strongly believe that climate adaptation and global mobilization for climate adaptation is going to be in the center of the political negotiation, not just in COP26, but everywhere else. In order for this to happen more efficiently, we need more integration at three levels. And I will finish here so we can have some Q&A session. One, we need more integration at the multilateral level with respects to the conventions. Yes, we've been talking for the last 20 years within the Rio Convention on the need to integration, but the integration is more than that. And it's not just the Rio Conventions. And as a matter of fact, I, as an environmental lawyer, I strongly believe that We need to have a global environmental framework. We need to redesign the UN system with respect to sustainability goals and challenges. And those proposals has been done. Unfortunately, the political appetite is not there, but I strongly believe as a professional in this field that we need that. So the need to integrate the Rio Convention, the non-UN conservation-related conventions, the chemical conventions, and many others into a new framework is something that is unavoidable, and we need to bring this conversation and this decision at that level. On the other level, we need more integration within the different funds, and this is where Miko and myself, we have begun some very interesting conversations. The GF and the Adaptation Fund, they work together. They are part of a big family, but there is a lot of room for improvement. And I've been talking with Miko about not just collaborating. For me, collaborating is not the proper way. We need to complement. You do this and we do that. We have a long-term vision where we come together because we share a long-term vision where we are very clear on how we complement, not collaborate. This is a new way of doing things. I've been having that conversation with the Green Climate Fund. It is going very well. I just begin having this conversation with Nico. We got the LDC fund and the SEC funds, which are great. As a newcomer into the GF, and as I look to everything we do, it is a no-brainer to me to really work with the Adaptation Fund on the next level of engagement. And this is based on the long-term vision, minimum 10 years, maximum 50 years, on how we are going to complement. And I'm really excited that Nico, myself, and our teams will be beginning to put content into this idea, as I strongly believe that there will be a massive mobilization of financial resources for climate adaptation and for climate resilience, as countries prove their political commitment and their willingness to do the extra mile effort. And the third level of integration that is needed is at the country level, and I already mentioned why. The need for policy coherence, the need to mobilize more efficiently domestic resources, because at the end of the day, the Adaptation Fund and the GF will never have enough funds to fully finance and support the transition agenda. We should really concentrate in being very strategic and very well focused on the less developed nations, as we can walk with middle income nation and even OECD high middle income nation on how do we go from a grant-based mechanism into something that give us probably a non-grant or a mix or a sui generis mechanism by which we can upscale the investments, and we can really concentrate on small island developing states. We got a lot of small islands that in terms of GDP, they are very high, but they're extremely vulnerable to climate change. Vulnerability is an element that we will be including more and more into the resource allocation framework of the GF for obvious reasons. And I tend to believe that this is an area that the GF and the Adaptation Fund can work closer, so we can generate more integration, more coherence, better governance at the country level, so we can be able to have a high impacts. So with this, Mr. Chair, I want to end my presentation of today. Really happy to share with you about your board meeting. Wish you a very successful board meeting, and very happy to be able to address any question or comments that the board members may have. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez, for outlining your vision for the GEF and complementarity with the other funds, and all the work that you have done in Costa Rica It was very interesting indeed to listen to, not at least when you outlined how small the part is that the multilaterals play, and the public expenditure is actually 80% of sustainability investments, and something that we need to keep in mind, of course, and being mindful that we are even smaller than the GEF. I don't even want to count what percentage the AF would have in that, but I leave that to Mikko to count sometime. And it was very interesting to hear how you went to 100% renewable energy in Costa Rica, and that you doubled the size of the forest and you tripled the economy during the same time. And I can, just to pick up a case in point, from my country in Sweden, we've had a carbon tax for a very long time, and that has proved very, very efficient in lowering emissions since many years. That is indeed something that I can talk for as well. I don't want to take more time because I would like to invite for comments and questions, possibly from members of the board. So please raise your hands if you would like to make a comment or ask Mr. Rodriguez something. I could see Paul raising his hand in the camera, but was that correct? Yes. Then I would like to give, no? Okay. I don't see anyone raising their hand digitally, at least. Yes, now I see Naima. Please, Naima, you have the floor.
Sorry. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you, Naima.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to congratulate you, Matthias and Alvara, for your new roles, and of course to thank Ibila for the successful accomplishment during his mandate last special year. I would like to thank the Secretariat for this opportunity to hear directly and to engage. I know that we don't have time to engage with Mr. Rodriguez, but I appreciate this chance to hear directly from him. This is very much appreciated. First of all, I would like to thank him for his time and for his inspiring thoughts, including with his Costa Rican experience. It is very informative for us. I agree that mainstreaming is in the broader development planning is the most and the best way to succeed in protecting our environment and in tackling the climate change. I also agree that this requires a robust national capacity, of course, as you mentioned, Mr. Rodriguez, at the multilateral level, between funding or between multilateral funds, but especially within the nations, within countries. It requires technical, financial, institutional capacity. You mentioned the way we need to tackle funding and investment, domestic investment in this. I am also curious to hear from you, based on your experience, and to hear some entry points on how to create this required capacity. Yes, we agree that it's very important, but it's very hard to build. So, do you have? It's sure that we can't have solutions that will help all countries, but is it possible to hear from you some entry points on how to create the capacity to build this robust and required not expertise but capability to lead the climate issues and in particular adaptation uh, in a positive way. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Naima. I would maybe, if there are another question, we would maybe take one more and then let Mr. Rodriguez come in. But I don't see any other hand raised at the moment. So I think I leave the opportunity to you, Mr. Rodriguez, to respond.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And there's a question on the chat box that I will also address if you allow me.
Yes,
Naima, thank you for your question. Capacity building is something that we've been, all of us, we've been working for many years, and we deal with the, shifting baselines constantly. I tend to believe that the capacities are much better than a few years ago with respect to resilience, loss and damages, and climate adaptation. Countries are really understanding the importance of climate adaptation and climate resilience. And just as we think, how do we strengthen the national capacities? It is extremely important for me to really, open also the discussion on what is the institutional approach that we need to develop at the country level to deal with this, because we normally deal with the loss and damages of extreme weather events, being rains or droughts. How do we budget and through which agencies is extremely important, because these are not the ministries of environment, which are the ones who do the climate negotiations, and which are the ones who are the focal point, at least at the GF. One element that I've been confronted with in my effort to mainstream and integrate is the fact that at the country level, the operational focal point of the GF is somebody from the Ministry of Environment. And I want the Ministry of Planning, the Ministry of Agriculture, the Ministry of many other stakeholders into that. So I'm moving from a individual, which is a focal point, into a steering committee that represents many other political sectors, because otherwise I will be captured or limited by the priorities that are coming from the Ministry of Environment, which is great, but it's not enough for me to be working and engaging in the system change. So I'm, opening that front. And there's a bunch of countries who already are working with the GF, implementing agencies with these steering committees, and are helping us a lot. How do we help countries really mainstream the national adaptation plans, going from sectors, from the water all the way to the energy and the agricultural sectors are things that we need to really, tune up and focus much better. And yes, an area where we, at least at the year, we normally underestimated is on knowledge management. We do knowledge management in a very formal way, in a very vertical way, and very much driven by the Secretariat over here in Washington. I want to turn it all the way around. I want to begin through a bottom-up, doing a lot of South-South exchanges. I'm really turning the program upside down, or at least the vision. And in being able to, even though we work with constituency and there is a lot of interaction inside that constituency, the Latin America constituency doesn't have any relationship and exchanges with the African constituency. I need to break those silos and begin engaging in them, so the quality of the projects and the implementation, execution of those projects are strongly supported by the learned lessons, because the same challenges that countries in Latin America are facing with are the same challenges that African countries are facing with. And the other element is, how do we engage more the private sector into this? I got a very concrete challenge with respect to the GF funds. Sometimes, or in many places, the governments tend to believe that these are government funds, and these are not government funds. These are funds for the country. And the country is not just the government. It's many other stakeholders rather than governments. So being able to generate the proper political processes, dialogues, and consultations beyond the mere formalities is extremely important for me, because this gives me a better sense of success within the projects and the implementation of them. So the private sector engagement, civil society engagement are extremely important in that context. And I tend to believe that with respect to the adaptation fund is something very similar. In Costa Rica, we had our share of adaptation projects from the adaptation fund through the Fund de Cooperación, which is the local NGO, and the results are very, very interesting. I'm so happy. Even though Fund de Cooperación was created in the Ministry of Environment, they are working closer to the Ministry of Agriculture than with the Ministry of Environment, and I may feel a little bit bad about that. But at the end of the day, I'm extremely happy that the adaptation fund through Fund de Cooperación in Costa Rica is working on ecosystem-based adaptation on the agricultural sector, helping poor farmers to adapt to climate change. And if you see the projects that we have done over there, those farms in the projects with Fund de Cooperación do much better after the big rains or after the big droughts. And the Ministry of Agriculture is really putting their eye on those projects, so those learned lessons, best practices can be taken into the outreach extension programs that the Ministry of Agriculture has. So that's another way by which we can build capacities through those political processes by other stakeholders can really learn. So we need to break that siloed relationship with ministers of environment and use them as a political convener for doing landscape approaches. And I believe that is another way that we can do it. So the learning management, the South-South collaboration, the bottom-up approach are ways, Naima, by which, and the role of civil society that we are approaching that. So I got a Chair, I got a question here. Will the GF consider an MOU with the Adaptation Fund in the same way GF has an MOU with the Green Climate Fund? I would say yes, a big yes. I think it's a matter of common sense. A common of is something also very strategic for the long term. And in my interest of working in integration, we need to integrate the funds. And I see high potential to do it. And I hope that I can be able to work on this with Miko and eventually bring to the attention of your board, Miko, and my council at the GF an MOU that captures the long-term vision for complementarities between the GF and the Adaptation Fund. I think it's also a responsibility within our recipient countries and also a responsibility within our donors. That is extremely important, because if we will begin a positive cycle of increased funding through ODA for climate mitigation and climate adaptation, we need to generate we need to generate to our donors the proper institutional approaches by which those increased funding can generate an impact at the ground level. And then there's another question here, if you allow me, Chair, on the chat box about how do you see concrete synergies between LDCF and SECF and Adaptation Fund. Something that I talk a little bit, a lot to be done, and this is where I want to, work with Miko and his team on the very specific details of how a long-term vision within the LDCF and SECF and Adaptation Fund. And I hope that, in a couple of months, 3 months, we can do that. If you all like the idea, I can be also very happy if we can think on doing an announcement in COP26 of the Adaptation Fund and the GF on announcing their long-term collaboration, long-term vision for complementarity. I think that's the right venue. We got quite some time to do it, but that can be, a very good venue to announce a very comprehensive, ambitious way of working in our funds. Over to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rodriguez, for responding to also the questions in the chat and those the question posed by Naima. It was very interesting indeed to listen to you, and I look very much forward working with the Jeff and that the Secretariat can continue working on some of the ideas that you mentioned, and that we will be able to come back on some of the ideas at board level as well. And I would really like to thank you for taking your time for coming to the meeting. And I do not see any more questions at the time. So, and in the interest of time, I think we should move on with our agendas. We started 20 minutes late, also because we did not have interpretation, but it was extremely interesting to listen to you. And let me see, there was one new message coming in. Yeah, just a thank you. So I thank you very much on behalf of all of the board, and wish you all the best.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Chair. Very successful meetings, and whatever you need from the GF will be right next to the Adaptation Fund.
Thank you. Dear colleagues, we then will move on to agenda item number 4, which we jumped over, which is the report on the activities of the outgoing chair. I would like to invite Ibila to report on his activities during the intersessional period, which are contained in document AFB/B36/inf.5. Please, Ibila, you have the floor.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. Merci pour vos mots aimables à mon endroit à l'introduction. J'ai été sensible de vous entendre parler français. Parlez-vous passé. Je passe service infiniment. Merci, j'ai été sensible à cela. Je voudrais remercier également notre vice-président Albara, qui est vraiment un ami, tout le temps on est ensemble. Franchement, merci beaucoup à vous tous. Soyez rassurés, vous avez tout mon soutien dans l'accomplissement de votre mandat. Le premier rapport que je vais vous lire est en fait notre rapport à tous. C'est tout le monde qui l'a fait, c'est le rapport des activités menées par le conseil d'administration du fonds. Je ne suis alors que le porte-parole. Mais avant toute chose, je voudrais sincèrement remercier le secrétariat du fonds d'adaptation, notamment son chef, M. Miko, et toute son équipe qui ont travaillé avec moi de façon intelligente et ouverte pour que nous ayons ce rapport. Je ne peux pas les citer eux tous, mais je vois là Aya, Sophie, pratiquement tout le monde. Mon cher ami Matteo, pour les communiqués de presse infiniment merci à vous tous, Miko. Sincèrement, merci pour l'excellent travail que vous avez abattu en notre nom à tous en tant que membre du conseil d'administration du fonds d'adaptation. Je voudrais remercier également tous les collègues, hein, notamment les membres du comité d'examen des projets, programmes, de l'éthique et des finances, et même du comité d'accréditation. C'est tout cela qui nous a permis de faire un bon travail. Je n'oublie pas les membres du groupe technique d'évaluation technique qui fait un travail formidable. Donc, merci à vous tous. Le présent rapport est en fait divisé en deux parties. Les activités, je peux dire, concrètes de rédaction et également des activités par lesquelles le fonds d'adaptation se fait connaître à travers le monde à l'occasion de plusieurs événements. D'abord, pour l'intercession, comme vous le savez, la deuxième partie de la 35e session a été terminée et il fallait adopter le rapport final, ce qui a été fait, et cela en collaboration avec le secrétariat de la Convention, que je remercie encore une fois. On a finalisé ce rapport et après cela, nous avons pu travailler de façon étroite pour traiter de certains sujets qui étaient intervenus lors de cette intercession-là. D'abord, l'endossement des principes de l'adaptation menée au niveau local prôné par la Commission mondiale pour l'adaptation. Ça, on a pu adopter ces principes-là en tant que fonds pionnier dans la mise en œuvre des projets concrets d'adaptation. Également, on a pu vraiment réorienter la contribution de la Commission européenne au profit de l'accélérateur sur l'innovation climatique, ce qui est vraiment très important pour nous. Et nous avons pu achever à bon terme le processus de recrutement de la nouvelle présidente du groupe de référence pour l'évaluation technique que nous avons à FOTEG. Ça a été vraiment très important. Suite à la démission de la précédente présidente, il fallait qu'on ait une nouvelle présidente. Ça a été fait et je la remercie sincèrement. Lors du travail du comité sur l'éthique et le financement, elle nous a présenté son rapport et on a pu tout ça apprécier. Merci beaucoup. Troisième partie, nous avons pu avoir la signature d'un accord pour que nous puissions faire face au coronavirus, parce que ce coronavirus a mis à mal certaines activités et il fallait vraiment prendre des mesures pour que le fonds ne soit pas bloqué. Et donc, par rapport à ça, on a pu signer un certain nombre d'accords pour que cela puisse être fait. Vous allez voir, la plupart de nos activités, c'est comment débloquer les fonds, comment valider, lorsque les projets sont validés, comment les faire avancer sur le terrain. Et là, nous allons dire en grande partie, d'abord, c'est la signature des projets et programmes qui ont été validés par le comité d'examen des projets et programmes et validés par le fonds. Là, nous avons pu vraiment signer 8 projets. C'est vraiment intéressant. Et lorsque les projets ont été signés, il faut débloquer les fonds. Et donc, on a pu signer également les demandes de transfert de fonds au profit des projets. Et cela, on en a fait jusqu'à 17 à travers les tranches successives qui ont eu lieu. Et je peux dire, après ces éléments-là, en grand chef, c'est comment on a pu aider à la formulation, les subventions pour la formulation de projets. Là, nous avons pu vraiment signer 9 documents pour que ces subventions pour la formulation des projets puissent être vraiment effectives. Et également, il y a des subventions d'assistance pour la formulation des projets, 3 que nous avons pu signer, et les différents amendements aux lettres que nous avons eu à faire parce que le coronavirus est intervenu en temps et il a nécessité de faire un décalage d'un certain nombre de thèmes. Là également, nous avons pu signer 3. Et il y a les subventions pour les petits projets d'innovation, 3 que nous avons pu signer, et les subventions de préparation au nombre de 2. Également, dans notre travail en tant que fonds d'adaptation, nous avons intérêt à faire connaître le fonds d'adaptation à travers ces activités concrètes, notamment par la sensibilisation lors des grands événements. C'est ainsi que lors du dialogue sur les changements climatiques, les 3 les 3 et 4 décembre, nous avons pu vraiment représenter le fonds, afin de savoir ce que le fonds fait, quelles sont ses prouesses, ses innovations, ce qui a été vraiment apprécié. Le 14 décembre également, lors du sommet sur l'ambition climatique, nous avons eu à représenter le fonds et présenter vraiment les progrès que ce fonds-là fait en termes de financement climatique, ce qui est vraiment bien. Vous le savez très bien, le fonds marche sur les donations des gouvernements. Et là, sincèrement, il y a eu des lettres de remerciement que nous avons pu adresser au gouvernement partenaire. Je tiens à votre nom à tous à remercier ces gouvernements que vous connaissez souvent. La plupart du temps, ces gouvernements-là, de Belgique, France, Suède, un peu partout. Donc, on a pu écrire pour vraiment les remercier. Et comme vous le savez également, nous, à chaque fois que nous faisions une activité, notamment cette session du comité, du conseil d'administration de fonds, un communiqué final est souvent rédigé et partagé à tous les partenaires pour qu'ils sachent ce qui a été fait lors d'une session du conseil d'administration, les résultats auxquels nous sommes parvenus. Et ça, on en a fait pratiquement 10 communiqués de presse pour les 12 derniers mois, soit pratiquement un communiqué de presse tous les mois. Et ça, vous l'avez, le document est là, c'est ce qui est vraiment impressionnant. En gros, je dirais que nonobstant l'avènement de la pandémie de Covid-19, le fonds s'est acquitté honorablement de sa mission à travers notamment le financement des projets concrets d'adaptation, à travers notamment l'accompagnement qu'il faut faire pour que les entités nationales accréditées puissent accomplir leurs travaux. Et cela, c'est en l'honneur de nous tous. En votre nom à tous, je veux dire merci à tous ces acteurs-là, les entités nationales de mise en œuvre, les entités régionales et internationales de mise en œuvre et tous les partenaires qui accompagnent le fonds d'adaptation. Encore une fois, infiniment merci au secrétariat du fonds d'adaptation, Miko et toute son équipe, Aya et tout, même je dirais, le personnel informatique de la Banque mondiale pour les transferts de fonds. Je voudrais que Miko leur transmette mes sincères remerciements pour l'accompagnement efficace qu'ils ont eu à faire afin que les fonds soient débloqués à temps. Infiniment merci. Voilà la substance de ce rapport que je voudrais vous présenter. Merci beaucoup. Monsieur le Président, je vous fais l'honneur de vous donner de reprendre le micro. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Ibila, for that report. I can see a hand raised from Edie. Would you like to ask a question to Ibila? You have the floor, Edie.
Okay. Hello, colleagues. Good morning. Matthias, thank you for giving me the floor. So I just want to declare a conflict of interest for the regional project, the one which is projected to be implemented in Guinea, Mali, Mauritania, and Senegal. So it's what I want to raise here. Thank you.
Thank you, Edie. That is well noted that you declared a conflict of interest for the regional proposal that concerns Senegal. I would maybe ask then maybe if we should, in the interest of our interpreters, maybe if we should have a break now or if we should go on for yet one agenda item. I'm asking the interpreters, would you like to have a break now or should we go on for another 8 minutes or something? Because that's what the next agenda point will take. Later, I can see they're writing here. So then I would like to ask my vice chair then to take over the meeting. If you are available, Albara, I would please give you the floor and continue on the agenda. And I would then propose that after the next point that we will have the 20 minutes break in the interest of the interpreters. Thank you. Please, Albara.
Thank you very much, Matthias. Thank you, colleagues, for the rich discussions. Now we turn to agenda item 6, I believe, and that's the report of the Secretariat. And for that, may I invite Miku to present the report of the Secretariat. Miku, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vice Chair. And again, good evening, good afternoon, and good morning, members and alternates and observers. It's very nice to see you all, and I hope you are doing well despite the challenging circumstances. I would like to highlight some areas in the Secretariat's work that are outlined in the document AFB B36/3. I do not have a PowerPoint presentation for this agenda item. The past 5 months since the previous board meeting at the end of October have been very busy at the Secretariat. As you may see in the document, the fact that we have continued to work in a completely home-based modality has not reduced the amount of engagement with our stakeholders. Although we have not been able to travel, we have both organized a large number of events and participated as speakers in events by others. There have been many opportunities to reach wider audiences using web-based events, and despite the global perception of webinar fatigue, we have been quite successful in achieving very good audiences in our interactions with the Adaptation Fund. In addition to following up on the decisions made by the board at its meeting in October, and intersessionally, the Secretariat has worked on its recurring areas of work related to project proposals, accreditation and reaccreditation applications, readiness activities, knowledge management, communications and outreach, gender issues, and resource mobilization, as well as cooperation with the Technical Evaluation Reference Group and other climate funds, among others. In the area of readiness, there were several activities, but I would like to especially mention the virtual country exchange that was organized in partnership with the national implementing entity for Senegal, that is Centre de Suivi Écologique, which focused on the theme of disaster risk reduction and coastal zone management, and was participated by 10 other NIEs from around the world. I will not go into the areas of communications and knowledge management or the work of the accreditation team, since we have on the agenda specific items on them. In terms of management of the active portfolio, we continue to receive a number of requests for project revision and project delay. The decision taken by the board at the October meeting on taking adaptive measures in relation to project delays and project changes during the pandemic has seemed to have a positive impact, so that we have not received quite as many requests that would require the attention of the board. In the area of gender, the board intersessionally approved the revised gender policy and gender action plan, and there have also been several collaborative activities with other entities under the convention and more broadly. The Secretariat is already planning the practical implementation of the gender policy and action plan. In terms of resource mobilization, the Secretariat supported the board in organizing the contributor dialogue on December 14 in conjunction with the 2020 Climate Ambition Summit. The dialogue was very well attended and was co-hosted by the UK presidency of COP26 and the Chilean presidency of COP25. We were extremely lucky to have co-moderators from both presidencies, and as opening speakers, the chair of the Adaptation Fund board, the president of COP25, the COP26 champion on adaptation and resilience, and the deputy executive director of the UNFCCC Secretariat, and an impressive list of speakers from contributor governments, including Germany, Sweden, Italy, Spain, Quebec, the Brussels Capital Region of Belgium, and the European Union, as well as the chair of the Least Developed Countries Group from Bhutan, representing recipient countries. And we also had representatives of NIEs and civil society. During and around that dialogue, altogether $116 million were pledged or transferred by Germany, Italy, Sweden, the Walloon and Brussels Capital regions of Belgium and Ireland. That figure, 116 million, is of course very close to the resource mobilization target of 120 million that had been set by the board in October. In addition to these contributions, the fund received the first contribution from a non-Annex 1 party, that is from the government of Qatar, through the Qatar Fund for Development in January, which was the first contribution for this calendar year towards the target of this year, and was also the first contribution from the Middle East region during the fund's existence. Since the COP24 in Katowice in December 2018, the Secretariat has been in touch with the European Union regarding the pledge they made there. I have to report to you that following lengthy discussions involving the EU, the trustee and the Secretariat, it turned out to not to be possible for the EU to transfer the resources to the fund because of the internal rules of the EU. A number of attempts were made jointly to explore alternative routes involving the help of third organizations to channel the resources to the fund, but such solutions could not be found within the timeline imposed by the EU for the placement of the funds by 31st of December of 2020. Therefore, in order to secure the contribution for activities in line with the fund's mandate, the EU suggested to proceed swiftly to the option identified with directly funding a project or program approved by the board. The Secretariat suggested channeling the funds to the program UNDP Innovation Small Grant Aggregator Platform, which is part of the Adaptation Fund Climate Innovation Accelerator Program, and the contractual arrangement between the EU and UNDP was swiftly completed for that purpose. That contribution, even though not having been made into the Adaptation Fund Trust Fund itself, closely complements the Adaptation Fund investment in innovation and enhances its reach towards the goals of the fund. I am not going into the work of the Technical Evaluation Reference Group, since they have reported to the Ethics and Finance Committee on their work, and that information is included in the relevant reports. However, the chair of the TERG and the TERG Secretariat are available to answer any questions you may have. Looking ahead, the situation in the United States, where the Secretariat is based in terms of the pandemic, is slowly starting to plateau, if not yet improve, particularly with the rollout of vaccination, and we hope to resume at least some degree of office-based work during the first half of fiscal year 2022, which means the period of time from July 1st onwards, although there are still many uncertain factors. However, based on the current information, we will most likely not see many changes during the remainder of the current fiscal year, that is by the end of June, on our working modalities. In closing, I would like to thank the board for its flexibility, support, and cooperation during the intersessional period, despite the continuing pandemic that has undoubtedly affected all of you in many ways. And I would very warmly want to thank the outgoing chair and the incoming chair and vice chair for all their support to the work of the Secretariat. As importantly, I would like to express my sincere appreciation and thanks to all the members of the Secretariat who have continued to work very hard in very challenging individual situations without being able to normally recharge during this time. The team has been able to adapt, but I know that it has also sometimes been at the expense of other areas in life. Even if the trends give us hope for better times ahead, the sheer duration of the pandemic situation has caused a sense of fatigue, and I'm just extremely proud of the team for withstanding these circumstances and continuing to deliver on the mandate of the fund. With this, I would very much like to thank you for your attention. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mikko, and really thank you very much to you and to the great team at the Secretariat for your endless effort and for really protecting the interests of the fund and making sure that we progress despite all the challenges and difficulties we have faced so far. So thank you really very much for that, and for really big thanks to the great team that you have. So colleagues, I'm opening the floor for any comments or questions. So I don't see any, okay, I see Naima asking for the floor, so Naima, you have the floor.
Very much. Mr. Co-Chair. I would like to thank the Secretariat for that brilliant presentation. And of course to congratulate the staff for the numerous accomplishments. I have a small question, if you don't mind. I'm sorry I couldn't get the reasons why the EU couldn't channel its contribution to the fund. Uh, does it mean that this is the first time that the EU contributes to the fund? Um, and that's it. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Naima. So colleagues, any other questions, or shall I turn back to Miko to answer? So Miko, you have the floor.
Thank you, Vice Chair, and thank you, Naima, for the question. The European Union has never transferred funds to the Adaptation Fund, and they have also never transferred funds to the other climate funds under the Climate Convention. So this was the first such pledge. And what turned out to be the difficulty that in the end prevented them from transferring is that by their internal rules, they are bound, they can only transfer funds to organizations and recipients that have been assessed through an elaborate process and that have been accredited in a way to access funds. The main reason why that could not be done is the specific institutional arrangement of the Adaptation Fund with its should I say, decentralized functions between the board that has legal personality in Germany and the trustee, which is the World Bank, and the Secretariat, which is hosted within the World Bank. The EU had anticipated that they could transfer the funds to the Adaptation Fund as if they would transfer funds to the World Bank, but because of this institutional arrangement of the Adaptation Fund, that was not possible. And also, as we tried many ways of going around this challenge, we were not able to find a solution that would have been possible given the. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Miko. I'm sure that answered the question quite well by Naima. I'm wondering if there are any other colleagues asking for the floor. So I see none. If I can invite colleagues to take note of the report of the Secretariat, and then maybe we will have a 20 minutes break, as my co-chair has indicated to me. So thank you, colleagues, and we see you back in 20 minutes. Thank you very much, and see you soon. So good evening, colleagues. Welcome back to the board meeting. I hope we have quorum and we can start the meeting. Okay, thank you very much. And now, colleagues, if I can turn your attention to agenda item 8 on the report of the 27th meeting of the Project and Program Review Committee, PPRC. And for that, if I can invite the chair of the PPRC, Susanna, to introduce the report and recommendations of the PPRC. So Susanna, you have the floor.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I would like to congratulate you and Matthias for your new roles. And I would like also to thank Ivila for his work. Before starting with the report, let me thank again the PPRC members for the very constructive participation and collaboration during and after the meeting. And the 27th meeting of the PPRC took place on March the 22 and 23rd in an online format. The first agenda item was the report of the Secretariat on the initial screening / technical review of the project and program proposal that was presented by the Secretariat. The report included the funding status and the situation of the pipeline according to the latest financial report presented by the trustee as of 31st of December 2020. The report also included an overview of the financial resources available for the regional projects and programs, highlighting that $2.53 million remain from the initial amount approved for 2021 for regional programming. It was also explained that the 3 projects that were waitlisted after the second session of the 35th board meeting in October 2020 for insufficient funding under the MIE cap were released from the wait list. So there are currently no projects in the wait list. The PPRC recommended that the board includes in its work program for fiscal year 2022 the provision for an amount of $60 million to be provisionally set aside for funding regional projects and programs, and also the provision for an amount of $20.2 million to be provisionally set aside for enhanced direct access projects and programs and projects formulation funding. Being this the first time such funding is being set aside for that purpose, following the approval of the EDA funding window in last October. The next agenda item was the review of single country and regional proposals. The report was presented by the Secretariat. During the meeting, the committee adopted recommendation for 17 concrete projects, programs, proposals. The proposals consist of 7 fully developed 17 concrete projects, programs, proposals. The proposal consists of 7 fully developed single country project proposals, 3 single country project concepts, 2 fully developed regional projects proposals, 2 regional project concepts, and 3 regional pre-concepts. Specifically, the PPRC committee recommended that the board approves the 5 fully developed single country proposals, particularly for Indonesia 1 and 2, United Republic of Tanzania, Syrian Arab Republic, and Zimbabwe. For the projects, for the 2 projects for Indonesia, the recommended approval will be considered after the status of the implementing entity changes to accredited. The committee is also recommending the endorsement of 2 single country concepts, specifically for Lebanon and Vietnam. Regarding the regional projects and programs, the committee is recommending the endorsement of 2 concepts for Azerbaijan and Iran, and another one for Chad and Sudan, and 2 pre-concepts for Guinea, Mali, Mauritania, Senegal, and the other one for Cameroon, Central African Republic, Chad, Niger, and Nigeria, and the project formulation grant requested. The total funding to be set aside according to the recommendation for single country and regional projects and programs amounts to $16.6 million. During the committee meeting, it was also discussed the report of the initial screening technical review of innovation small grant proposals. 3 innovation small grants had been processed and technical review by the Secretariat, with total requesting funding amounting to $748,704,000. The 3 innovation small grants submitted were for Bhutan, Dominican Republic, and Zimbabwe, and they were not recommended to the board for approval. The next agenda item was on learning grant proposals. A representative from the Secretariat presented the report, highlighting that the Secretariat received 1 learning grant submitted for Kenya for a total requested amount of $143,545, which the PPRC recommended to the board for approval. The next agenda item was on large grant projects. Specifically, the large grant projects call for proposals. As a background, it was explained that the second session of the 35th meeting in October 2020, the board had approved the process for providing funding for innovation through large grant to implemented entities. Through the same decision, the board had requested the Secretariat to prepare the first request for proposals to implemented entities for 30 million to be launched by the first quarter of calendar year 2021. In order to launch these grants, the Secretariat has developed the request proposal template, the review template, and the instructions for preparing a request for innovation large grants. So following the discussion, the PPRC recommended that the board approves the large grant project proposals template, the review criteria template, and the instructions for preparing a proposal for large grants and launch the request for proposal. Therefore, submissions of innovation large grants proposals are invited to be considered as early as the 37th meeting of the board. The committee also covered the discussion of 2 agenda items related to the readiness program, specifically the report on the readiness support package pilot and the report of the Secretariat on the intersessional review cycle for readiness grants. Regarding the first one, the readiness support package grant as a pilot was included in the work plan for the readiness program for fiscal year 2018. After the completion of the pilot, the Secretariat undertook a review and analysis of the pilot readiness package grant. Following the presentation and the discussion, the PPRC recommended to approve the readiness package grant as a standing window and replacement to South-South cooperation grants under the readiness programs to provide for the accreditation of national implemented entity. Specifying that the readiness package grant shall be available for accreditation of NIEs only, up to a maximum of 150,000 per country, and request the Secretariat to prepare an analysis for opening the readiness package grant to non-NIE intermediaries that are accredited implemented entities. The representative of the Secretariat presented also the second readiness item. 3 readiness grants have been approved by the board during the intersessional review period between the 35th and 36th meeting of the board. During the discussion, a proposed way forward for increasing access to the readiness grants was presented. Therefore, the PPRC recommended that the board request the Secretariat to review readiness grants proposals during all intersessional periods between board meetings while recognizing that such grant may also be reviewed at regular meeting of the board, and also request the PPRC to consider intersessionally the technical review of such readiness grant proposals and to make intersessional recommendations to the board. The next agenda item was the request for a change in project approval conditions for 2 projects implemented by UN Habitat in Fiji and Solomon Island. The Secretariat explained that the board approved these projects with the condition that an updated environmental and social management plan had to be submitted to the board not later than the date of submission of the first project performance report. The thing was that the updated ESMP for both projects is linked with the finalization of comprehensive climate change vulnerability and disaster risk assessments in larger cities and informal settlements. However, both projects are unable to comply with the board conditions, and the implementing entity has submitted a request for a change in the project's approval conditions. In this regard, the committee recommended that the board approves on an exceptional basis the change in project conditions, which will request to the implemented entity to share an updated ESMP, which has to be attached to the annual project performance report. And finally, the committee meeting included the presentation of a suggested process for updating the full cost of adaptation reasoning. This item was originally discussed during the PPRC 24th meeting, but was repeatedly deferred due to lack of time. As the document was originally prepared to be presented at the first board after the approval of the implementation plan of the medium-term strategy, it does not include recent programmatic developments of the fund. Given that this is an issue, a technical issue, but also has a political dimension, the Secretariat is suggesting a 2-phase approach for presenting and developing a more comprehensive report. Therefore, the committee, after the presentation and discussion, recommended that the board request the Secretariat to develop a report including elements for defining the scope of application of the full cost of adaptation reasoning criterion in a two-stage manner for consideration at the 28th and 29th PPRC meetings. With that, the PPRC would like to present 29 recommendations on the screen for the consideration and request the board to adopt the recommendations. I would like to thank the members again, and the committee members, and also the Secretariat for the support. And as you have seen, this was a long agenda item for the committee meeting with a long report. Thank you very much, and back to you.
Thank you very much to the chair of PPRC, Susanna, for the comprehensive and excellent report. And also thanks to the committee and Secretariat for the great work that was put into that. So for now, if I may invite the Secretariat to display the recommendations. I will not be reading the recommendations one by one. I believe board members and alternates have received the report in advance. So if I can ask the Secretariat to display the recommendations on the screen. Thank you. Thank you very much. So here you have the project for the regional funding and the recommended decision for regional funding. And we're looking at AFB PPRC .27/4. So any comments or questions, colleagues? So I see none. I believe that this recommendation is approved. Can we move to the next recommendation? So the second recommendation on enhanced direct access funding, and that's document AFB PPRC .27/4. So colleagues, any comments? Okay, so this recommendation is approved. Can we move to the next one? So here we have the project in Indonesia, and that's recommendation PPRC .27/3. Any comments? Okay, so this recommendation is approved. Can we move to the next one? This is a second recommendation for Indonesia. I can't really see the number for the document, but you can scroll down a little bit. Can I kindly ask you maybe to just zoom out a little bit so the board would be able to see the full recommendation? Actually, rather zoom out maybe. Not a... So maybe if we can scroll down a little bit so that the board would be able to see the full recommendation. Okay, so colleagues, apologies for that, but I'm just making sure that you get to see the full recommendation. So any comments on this proposal? Okay, I see none, so it's approved. Can we move to the next one, please? So colleagues, here you can see the recommendation for the Belize project. Okay, I don't see any comments. Can we move to the next one? So I guess that's a second part of the recommendation. Okay, so no comments, it's approved. Can we move to the next one? Colleagues, here you have the recommendation for the United Republic of Tanzania. Okay, I don't see any comment. If we can move to the next one, it's approved. And here we have the Djibouti project. Okay, so no comment, it's approved. Can we move to the next one? Thank you. Can we move to the next one? Yes, so here is a project for the Syrian Arab Republic. Recommendation PPRC.27/8. This is approved. Can we move to the next one? Here you have the recommendation for Zimbabwe, a recommendation PPRC.27/9. Okay, this is approved, no comment. The next one. Please, if I'm moving too fast, feel free to stop me or interrupt me at any time. Here, colleagues, you have the Lebanon project, recommendation PPRC.27/10. Okay, this is approved. Can you move to the next one? Here you have the Vietnam project. So recommendation PPRC.27/11 is approved as well. Can you move to the next one? Here we have the recommendation for Yemen project, recommendation PPRC.27/12. So decision is approved. Can you move to the next one? Here we have the project for Angola and Namibia, recommendation PPRC.27/13. I see no comments. It's approved. Can you move to the next one? Okay, so can we move to the next one, please?
Vice Chair, if we can have a moment to remove members with conflict of interest to the waiting room.
Sure.
Apologies for the interruption.
No problem.
Vice Chair, we can go ahead. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Miko. So colleagues, here you have the recommended decision for Angola and Namibia, recommendation PPRC.27/13. Any comments? See none, so we move to the next one. Here you have the recommended decision for Cote d'Ivoire and Ghana. So can we move to the next page, please?
Sorry, Mr. Vice Chair, we are again moving colleagues to the board members to the waiting room. Just a second. Please go ahead, Mr. Vice Chair.
Thank you very much. So here, colleagues, you have the recommended decision for Azerbaijan and Iran project. Could you please move to the next page? So I see no comments on recommendation PPRC.27/15, so that's approved. Can we move to the next one? Here, colleagues, you have the recommended decision for project in Chad and Sudan. So no comments on recommendation PPRC.27/16. So we move to the next one.
Chair, again, we will move the member to the waiting room. Thank you. Please go ahead, Mr. Vice Chair.
Thank you very much. So colleagues, any comments on recommendation PPRC.27/16? So I see none. Can we move to the next one? Here, colleagues, you have the recommended decision for Guinea, Mali, Mauritania, and Senegal. So colleagues, I see no comments on recommendation PPRC.27/17. We move to the next one. Here we have the recommended decision for Cameroon, Central African Republic, Chad, Niger, and Nigeria. Document PPRC.27/18. I see no comment. So we can move to the next one, please. Here, colleagues, you have the recommended decision for Costa Rica and Panama. Recommendation PPRC.27/19. Is there someone trying to take the floor, or? Okay, so I see no comment. Can we move to the next one, please?
Mr. Vice Chair, Eric, can you please give us a few seconds?
Sure.
Please go ahead, Mr. Vice Chair.
Thank you very much. Here, colleagues, you have a recommended decision for Bhutan, which is an innovation grant. Could you move to the next page, please? So colleagues, here you have the recommended decision for Zimbabwe, also an innovation grant, recommendation PPRC.27/22. Any comments? Okay, so this is approved. So can you move to the next one? Here, colleagues, you have the recommended decision for Kenya, a learning grant, document PPRC.27/23. Any comments? So I see none. Thank you. Can we move to the next one? Here, colleagues, we have the recommended decision for the readiness support. So no comments on recommendation PPRC.27/25. This is approved. Can we move to the next one? Here also is the recommended decision on the report on the readiness grant proposals. So I see no comments on recommendation PPRC.27/26. So this is approved. Can we please move to the next one? Here, colleagues, you have the change of approval conditions for the Fiji project. Okay, I see no comments. So could you please move to the next one? Here, colleagues, you have the change of approval conditions for the Solomon Islands proposal. Any comments? I see none. Thank you. Can we move to the next one? And here's a recommended decision for the full cost of adaptation reasoning. That's recommendation PPRC.27/29. Any comments? So no comments. This is approved.
Mr. Vice Chair, apologies for the interruptions. It seems that as we were going through the PowerPoint, we missed one slide with one decision on the Dominican Republic. So if you don't mind, we can go back to that slide to also approve that decision. So sorry about the inconvenience.
Oh, yes, please. Could we go back to that slide? Apologies, maybe I'm just going too fast because I'm sure all board members and alternates have already received the report. But if we could kindly reflect that missing project on the screen. And I also see Marc Antoine's hands up, but if we can look at the Dominican Republic project, and I can invite comments and then turn back to Marc Antoine. So I believe it was Dominican Republic, right? Apologies.
Sorry, yes, that is correct. We can have the slide on Dominican Republic back on, please. Thank you.
Sure. So colleagues, apologies for missing that project. It's a recommended decision for Dominican Republic and Innovation Grant, document PPRC.27/21. Any comments? So I see none. Marc Antoine, was your hands up for that particular proposal, or was it a general reflection? So a general reflection. So this is approved. Thank you, colleagues.
C'était à propos. It was it was because we jumped upon the 21 recommendation. That's okay.
Oh, thank you very much, Marc Antoine, for highlighting that, and apologies, colleagues, for missing that. So I see no comments on PPRC.27/21, so it's approved. I believe we are done with the PPRC recommendations after that one. So thank you very much, colleagues. Thank you very much to the chair of PPRC and to the committee and secretariat. I think that we have looked at all the projects. I'm not sure I see some comment on the chat. I just want to make sure. Okay, so thank you very much, colleagues. And now if I can invite you to look into agenda item number 9 on the 27th meeting of the Ethics and Finance Committee. And for that, I would like to invite the Vice Chair of the Ethics and Finance Committee, Ms. Sylviane, to deliver the report on EFC. So you have the floor.
Thank you very much, dear Vice Chair, and I would like to take this opportunity to congratulate you as our new Vice Chair, and also congratulate our new Chair, Matthias, and also to thank our going Chair, Mr. Ibila, for his dedication and great work during his chairmanship. Good morning, good afternoon, and evenings, colleague. I hope that that you and your family members are well. As just mentioned by our Vice Chair, due to the absence of the Chair of the Ethics and Finance Committee, Mohammed, as Vice Chair of the EFC, I'm presenting the report of the 27th meeting of the EFC. It took place on the 24th and 25th March in an online format. Well, after the transition of the chairmanship and vice chairmanship, the agenda of the meeting was adopted by the members as presented. In the adoption of the agenda, the EFC agreed to also discuss fiduciary issues related to UNDP under agenda item 9 on other matters. So under agenda item 4A, which was the financial status of the trust fund and the CER monetization, Representatives of the trustee presented the Adaptation Fund Trust Fund financial report, which was prepared by the trustee as at the 31 of December 2020. And in particular, the income of the fund, which consisted of contributions received during the year, donations, receivable and outstanding pledges, as well as income from the sale of CERs and investment income. Then after a second representative of the trustee provided an update on the CER market and CER monetization. The market remained much the same as in 2020. So the EFC took note of the trustee report. Then under agenda item 4B, the manager of the Secretariat presented the work plan proposal for fiscal year 2022. It was based on the hypothesis that fiscal year 2022 will be a fairly normal year, what we all want. So the manager of the Secretariat also responded questions from different board members about the likelihood that the AFB 37 will be held in an in-person format. Also regarding the resource mobilization, gender training that is planned for board members. The EFC recommended that the board approve the Adaptation Fund Board Secretariat's proposed work plan for the fiscal year 2022. Then under agenda item 4C, which was the administrative budget of the board and Secretariat and the trustee for the fiscal year 2022, and also the IFTERG and its Secretariat's budget for fiscal year 2022 and 2023. The representative of the Secretariat presented budget proposals. The manager of the Adaptation Fund Board Secretariat provided the rationale for the creation of 2 new staff positions that were requested by the AFB Secretariat. The representative of the trustee presented and clarified the bank's newly introduced uniform costing methodology to fully recover both direct and indirect costs associated with the trustee services, which resulted the cost increase in fiscal year 2021. Support for extending the practice of holding virtual meetings beyond the end of the pandemic was also expressed by several members, while concerns were also raised regarding virtual meetings. After those exchanges, the EFC recommended that the board approve the proposed administrative budgets for the 3 entities and also authorize the trustee to transfer the approved amounts to the respective secretariats. Then we move to agenda item number 5, which was the report of the chair of the Technical Evaluation Reference Group. The chair updated on the work of the TERG and presented 4 sub-items. So the first sub-items was the AF-TERG progress update on the review and revision of the evaluation framework, highlighting the conclusion that the evaluation framework, which had been developed in 2012, so already almost 10 years ago, required updating to reflect significant changes made with the funds since then. Members expressed the support and suggestion such as the need for a smooth transition and the incorporation of the aspect of the Paris Agreement. The EFC recommended that the board request the IFCHUG to prepare a draft evaluation policy for the Adaptation Fund that would then replace the current evaluation framework and to present it to the EFC at the next meeting. Under agenda sub-item B, the representative of the IFCHUG provided an overview of the findings and areas for further discussion emerging from the first phase of the midterm review of the medium-term strategy, noting that the presentation was solely for information of the board as the work was still ongoing. So the EFC took note of the report. Under agenda item, sub-item, IFCHUG synthesis of the Adaptation Fund final evaluations, the chair of the CHUG presented, the first synthesis of the Adaptation Fund final evaluation and the first of a planned series of annual evaluation syntheses to be produced by the IFCHUG under its approved strategy and work program. So the EFC took note of this information and recommended the board to request the Adaptation Fund Board Secretariat to consider the evaluations and prepare a management response during the intersessional periods between AFB 36 and AFB 37. Under sub-items D, IFCHUG advisory groups, the chair of the IFCHUG presented the objectives, composition, and membership of the project working groups, hereafter to be called as advisory groups. She also presented the roles and responsibilities of their members and the time frame and time commitment. The chair of the IFCHUG has addressed a number of questions and comments from the EFC members. Finally, the EFC took note of the information and also encouraged any member of the board wishing to participate in advisory groups in an individual non-representative capacity and on a voluntary basis. Then under agenda item 6, report on project inception delays and proposed option, the representative of Secretariat presented a report and proposed 4 options. General support was expressed for option 2, possibly in combination with option 4, which provided for a study by the Secretariat on options for project suspension or cancellation. So the EFC recommended that the board approve options 2 and 4, grant a maximum extension of 12 months for the inception of projects and programs, subject to their compliance with the requirements under option 2, and request the Secretariat to communicate this to the implementing entities. Then under agenda item 7, update on the resource mobilization strategy and action plan. The Secretariat provided an update on the fund's resource mobilization activities since the approval of the strategy in 2017. So the 4-year term for the new strategy was in line with the term of the first strategy, which covered the first period 2017-2020. So the Secretariat expected to present a new resource mobilization strategy. The EFC recommended indeed the board to request the Secretariat to prepare a draft resource mobilization strategy for the period 2021-2024 and a draft resource mobilization action plan and present them to the board at the 37th meeting. Then under agenda item 8, classification of implementing entity applicants as regional implementing entities. The Secretariat present the information on classification of implementing entity applicants as regional implementing entities. We had a discussion with clarification on this. And then the EFC recommended that the board approve the review process for certified self-assessment for the determination of whether an implementing entity applicant is eligible to apply for accreditation as a regional implementing entity. And then under other matters, a member of the ESC brought up the matter to the EFC that following allegations of financial misconduct in some of its projects, UNDP had conducted audit of its portfolio of projects implemented for the GEF. The GEF Council had discussed the matter at its meeting in December 2020 and had requested UNDP to implement the audit recommendation and to regularly report back to the GEF Council. The Secretariat conducted an initial assessment of the funds portfolio and had not found any similar fiduciary issues, nor did the report issued by the UNDP Office of Audit and Investigations identify any adaptation fund projects or raise any other fiduciary issue. However, the fund's standard project legal agreement required implementing entities to submit the final audit financial statement of the implementing entity grant accounts, including net investment income earned, prepared by an independent auditor or evaluation body as part of the project disclosure, and that due to its internal arrangements, UNDP had been unable to submit the required statements at the individual project level and had only submitted a statement for its entire portfolio. The Secretariat was working with UNDP to find a way to address this non-compliance with the operational policy and guidelines. So the FC recommended that the board request the Secretariat to coordinate with the Secretariats of the GCF and the GEF regarding fiduciary issues associated with the projects implemented by UNDP and provide an update on any implications of the fiduciary issues. So with that, I would hand over to our Vice Chair so that he can present the recommendations on the screen. And thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Vice Chair of the EFC, Sylviane, for the excellent and comprehensive report, and also best wishes to the Chair of the EFC. It's unfortunate he could not be with us today. I hope he's safe and well. If I may ask the Secretariat to kindly reflect on the screen the recommendations for the EFC. We will follow a similar approach to what we have done in the PPRC, as we have all received the report in advance of the meeting. So if we can just display the recommendations. So here, colleagues, you have the recommendations for the work plan of the board and Secretariat for fiscal year 2022. That's recommendation EFC.27/1. Any comments? Okay, I see none. This is approved. Can we move to the next one, please? Here, colleagues, you have the administrative budget of the board and Secretariat and the trustee for fiscal year 2022, and of the Adaptation Fund TERG and its Secretariat for fiscal years 2022-2023. Can we please move to the next page? Can we please move to the next page as well? So I see no comment on recommendation EFC.27/2. So it's approved. Can we move to the next one? Here, colleagues, you have the AFTERG progress update on the review and revision of the evaluation framework, recommendation EFC.27/3. Any comments? I see none. This is approved. Can we move to the next one? Here, colleagues, you have the AFTRG synthesis of Adaptation Fund final evaluations, and that's recommendation EFC.27/4. Any comments? I see none. This is approved. Can we move to the next one, please? Here, the AFTRG advisory groups, recommendation EFC.27/5. Any comments? Okay, I see Marc-Antoine's hand up. So Marc-Antoine, you have the floor.
We cannot hear you, Marc-Antoine.
Oui, ça y est, excusez-moi. Oui, merci vice-président, et je saisis d'ailleurs l'occasion pour aussi remercier le vice-président et le président sortant, Ibila, ainsi que Sylviane pour sa présentation de ce rapport très important. Ma question porte sur advisory groups. Je n'ai pas, désolé, j'ai peut-être pas lu tous les documents, notamment les documents qui sont en information. Donc, je voudrais comprendre ce que sont ces advisory groups, au sens où il est indiqué que c'est des groupes de travail. Alors, par rapport aux groupes de travail qui existent, par exemple, le groupe de travail sur l'innovation, le groupe de travail sur la mobilisation des nouvelles ressources. Est-ce que c'est ces groupes de travail qui sont maintenant qualifiés de groupes advisory group, ou c'est d'autres types de groupes de travail? Autrement dit, est-ce qu'on peut avoir un exemple de ce que peut être ces advisory groups? Et deuxième élément, qui est membre de ces advisory groups? Est-ce que c'est uniquement des membres du fonds d'adaptation, enfin du conseil du fonds d'adaptation, ou est-ce qu'il y aura d'autres membres extérieurs au fonds d'adaptation qui pourraient être membres de ces advisory groups? Je vous remercie.
Thank you very much, Marc-Antoine, for those questions. So I turn over to Miku or Sylviane. So I'm not sure which one of you would be in a position to answer those questions. So,
Mr. Vice Chair, if I may, we have the chair of the TERG, the Technical Evaluation Reference Group, in the meeting, and she would be best placed to answer this question if you allow. Is that acceptable?
yes, definitely, Miku. Thank you very much. So we turn to the chair of the AFTRG. So we have.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Vice Chair. Thank you. My name is Debbie Menezes. I'm the chair of the Adaptation Fund Technical Evaluation Reference Group, and I'm very pleased to be at this meeting. Thank you very much to the board member for their question. So the whole point of this advisory group is actually this would be an informal group that would provide advice to the Adaptation Fund's Technical Evaluation Reference Group. It's purely on a voluntary basis. And the idea is that individuals would come together to bring knowledge on sector, on policies that reflect their own interests. And it's actually a shared space for dialogue. And we're thinking of forming these on a topic-based approach. So for instance, just to give you an example, if we're looking at doing a thematic evaluation on a topic like innovation within the Adaptation Fund, then we would form an advisory group based on that. We would look at a balanced representation from across fund stakeholder groups. So what that might look like for the advisory group is perhaps 1 or 2 board members or alternates, 1 or 2 of members of the board secretariat, technical staff, maybe a couple of representatives from the implementing entities that are involved in implementing measures on this particular topic, and then perhaps some representatives from civil society and the private sector with experience in these thematic areas. And the idea is that the AFTERG would develop these terms of reference for topic-based advisory groups. We would then send out invitation letters to all the stakeholders along with the terms of reference. One of the stakeholders would be obviously the board, and that we would send this on to the board chair for forwarding the invite to the members and alternates. And whoever wanted to participate in this based on their own personal interest would need to consider their time commitments, a potential conflict of interest, and then inform the board chair perhaps of their decision. And we discussed that the board secretariat would help to play that facilitative role. Thank you. I hope I have answered your question, but I would be happy to provide any further detail if required. Thank you.
Thank you very much to the chair of the TERG. Marc-Antoine, do you have any follow-up questions, or can we move to the next recommendation? Okay, so Marc-Antoine, you have the floor.
Oui, merci, merci Madame de votre précision. Je suppose que vous allez lancer une liste de titres de groupes de travail. Vous allez faire, je suppose, un appel à candidature ou à candidater pour ce type de groupe de travail à un moment donné sur le site ou je ne sais pas quand ou comment, mais je suppose que vous allez identifier des thèmes et lancer un appel correspondant à chaque thème, juste pour préciser concrètement comment on va procéder pour la suite. Merci.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that question. The idea is that these would be very informal groups on a need basis. So at this point, we do not have a list of topics, but the idea is that it's an informal group. It's based on voluntary participation. We would, of course, make this information available. So in the interests of transparency and disclosure. But at this point, we don't have a list of all the advisory groups that we intend to have. We're sort of developing them. The reason that we put this up at the moment is the concept of the advisory groups that we were looking for EFC and board agreement to proceed on this basis. So that's the concept at the moment that we're discussing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. I see Marc-Antoine nodding, so I guess we can move to the next recommendation. Okay, thank you. So here, colleagues, you have the report on project inception delays and proposed options, recommendation EFC.27/6. Any comments? Okay, so I see none. Can we move to the next one, please? Okay, so colleagues, here you have the update on the resource mobilization strategy and action plan. That's recommendation EFC.27/7. See no comments. Can we move to the next one, please? Here, colleagues, you have the AFC recommendation, AFC 20.27/8, classification of implementing entity applicants as regional implementing entities. Any comments? So this is approved. Can we move to the next one, please? And I believe that we may, can we wait for a moment? Because I believe that there might be a conflict of interest. So colleagues, here you have the final recommendation, AFC.27/9, the fiduciary issues related to the United Nations Development Program. Any comments? So I see none. This is approved. Thank you very much, colleagues. Thank you, Selvian, for the excellent report, and thanks to the EFC for all the work that's done, and Secretariat as well. And now I may turn back to the chair, Matthias. So Matthias, you have the floor.
Thank you, Vice Chair. We then turn to the next agenda item, which is 11B, but I would just like to note that we are at 5:30 now, so I'd just like to ask the Secretariat. As I understand, we have exactly half an hour remaining of today's work before we cannot continue any longer. Is that correct? So I would propose that we start with 11B and continue as long as we can, but then we will probably have to resume some point tomorrow, continuing on this issue, as we will not have time to finish it. Could I maybe have a comment from Mikko on that suggestion?
Yes, Mr. Chair, that is correct.
Thank you, Mikko. So I would like to note that this agenda item is proposed to be discussed in a closed session, as it was discussed at the previous meeting. This agenda item deals with matters which have multifaceted implications, including political ones, and therefore the board wishes to discuss in a closed session. If I don't see anyone objecting to that in the board, that is my proposal. I see a hand raised by Fatou. Can I give the floor to Fatou? Did you have a question, Fatou? Fatou, are you there, or was it just a hand that you had not taken down from earlier?
Thank you, Chair. Mine was on the self-assessment. I raised my hand during the display of the self-assessment. I just had a question for the entities to have to do self-assessment. Is it will there be like boxes that they would tick with questions on what they have achieved, and will it be verified later by the Secretariat and probably the panel or the committee that is responsible? That was my question. I hope you are hearing me.
I'm hearing you. Sorry, was this referring to an earlier agenda point?
Yeah, early agenda point.
Was it the last agenda point, number 9 then?
Assessment by the entities.
Can I ask the Secretariat? Could someone maybe respond to that request?
Thank you, Chair. If I may briefly answer, and I may ask my colleague Sylvia, who coordinates the accreditation process, to provide further information on this. And thank you, Fatou, for the question. The basic idea is that indeed it would be a sort of box-ticking self-assessment that would be done by the applicant entity based on their assessment of their own institutional setup and characteristics. However, if based on that self-assessment, the entity is considered eligible to apply for accreditation as a regional implementing entity, and the accreditation process starts, then during the accreditation process, it would be verified that the information that they have provided in the self-assessment is correct. I wonder if this serves to clarify, and if not, my colleagues from the accreditation team can add more information.
Thank you very much. It has clarified. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mikko, and thank you, Fatou, for that question. I don't see anyone objecting to the proposal of continuing with agenda item 11B in closed session as per paragraph 20 of the rules of procedure of the board. The board can declare any of the meetings or segments thereof closed. And I will then ask all participants that are not members, alternates, or representatives of the AFB Secretariat or the trustee to leave the room. And I would like to request the Secretariat to verify